launch pad itself is getting ready for liftoff. We commanded the booster hold downs open already about 20 minutes ago or so. And then that just means that once that rocket has sufficient thrust to overcome its weight, your thrust to weight ratio goes over 1, it's going to lift off.
Things look like they are moving fast at Starbase, and that's exactly how we like it.
Yeah,
Rapid
exactly.
iteration is a key of SpaceX.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nominal.
30 seconds into flight, we are feeling the rumble. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines ignited on the Super Heavy booster.
Booster and ship, avionics, power, and telemetry nominal. Acquisition of signal, Corpus Christi.
The next major milestone is going to be a hot staging maneuver. Again, we're going to be doing that in just about 90 seconds. To do that, we're going to shut down all but the 3 center Raptor engines on Super Heavy. That'll be our MECO, our most engines cut off. And then the clamps holding the 2 stages together are going to release. Starship second stage will ignite its engines, the RVACs first, the sea levels right after that. The sea level engines will be splayed or just kind of pointed out at about a 15-degree angle. So if you look close and we get good tracking, you might be able to see those center right after. And so those 6 engines will push Starship off of the booster. Again, we'll see the booster engines start to shut down. You'll see all but 3 lights go out in the middle. And then we'll see the engines ignite on ship, pushing it away. And that will start carrying the ship into space. Booster will start to do its flip and then move into the boost back burn, setting it up for eventual splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Stage separation. Boost back startup.
Hot staging confirmed. Kate, we got a Starship on its way to space and a booster on the way back to the Gulf.
Ship continuing to burn its 6 engines, those larger circles, the Raptor vacuum engines, the inner circles, the Raptor sea level engines. We're about 30 seconds away, just under 30 seconds away from the start of the boost back burn. Excuse me, the landing burn on the booster. You can see the grid fins rotating. Those hypersonic grid fins are guiding us through the atmosphere back towards our splashdown site. Again, we're going for a for a splashdown, a soft splashdown. So for landing burn, we're going to expect to see the 13 center engines light, rapidly bring down the booster's velocity, and then just the 3 in the center for splashdown. Let's see if that'll work. We're getting a few engines. And to make it that far, to demonstrate the controlled re-entry up to that point is pretty darn good. Ship continuing to look nominal with its ascent burn. This burn lasting about 6 minutes total. And we're expecting that this burn will end just after T+8 minutes, about a minute from now. So far, though, I mean, congrats to the team. Making it this far is farther than we've gone.
Absolutely.
On Flight 2. Just wonderful views and great engine performance from the vehicles. We demonstrated controlled entry of the booster just stopped a little short of the engine relay, but hey, that's something we can learn for the next one.
Yeah, vehicle operators are standing by. Now, the next milestone coming up is in less than a minute. At that point, ship will, or I'm sorry, actually it already has.
Starship engine cut off.
There we go. Getting pretty close here.
And what you're seeing here, it looks like the vehicle is sort of moving back and forth. Part of what you're also seeing is one of the cameras, this onboard view that we have, is on the end of a flap. Starship has front flaps and rear flaps in the vehicle. So we've got 4 of those. And oh man, we can see the heating on those flaps as we're starting to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is where the Earth's atmosphere is doing the work to slow us down.
Now, like we said, this plasma field is, wow, what a view. We hope to maintain these views throughout. Starship is so big that we're hoping that the plasma field doesn't entirely blanket the entire vehicle. Right now, it is not. The Starlinks are
Views brought to you by Starlink.
Yeah, the Starlinks are still communicating and still capturing the data and the video that we see here. I mean, Shiva, this is just absolutely incredible views. We've never seen anything like this before. This is the biggest flying object ever in space.
Absolutely, Kate. And it's important to note, the ascent burn that we did was to get us to orbital velocities, even though we were on a nearly orbital trajectory. So the heating and the loads that Starship is going through right now are what it would be getting if it were recovering from an orbital mission. And just the fact that we have views through entry, this is incredible.
Yeah. Again, this is the furthest and fastest that Starship has ever flown. And you can definitely tell by the crowd here in Hawthorne.
The heat shield tiles doing their work. We talked about it earlier. Up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit that those heat shield tiles are dissipating as we are re-entering.
Yeah, now this was one of the critical, or rather the key mission objectives that we were hoping to hit today. We have never, like I said before, this is the fastest and furthest that Starship has ever flown. So this is the first time that we're getting to collect this re-entry data and understand how these 18,000 hexagonal heat shield tiles are working together to protect the belly of Starship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, the atmosphere is doing us a big favor here by
80 kilometers altitude.
The atmosphere is actually doing us a huge favor here by acting as a braking system for Starship as it re-enters the atmosphere.
And that's part of the reason why the flaps are so important. We're using the body of Starship and the drag from the atmosphere to slow us down from orbital speed. But you want the vehicle to remain stable. You want those heat shield tiles pointed down so they can absorb the heat of the Earth's atmosphere.
And so right now we're still waiting to see if we're going to get data back from this ship. We might be in a bit of a blackout period right now. So still waiting to hear the status on it. But yeah, we got to the actual entry portion of today. We started into peak heating, which was just a really big milestone. Starship is pretty unique in the way that it re-enters, especially for something reusable. The closest parallel has been the space shuttle. When we're comparing Starship to like when we bring a Falcon 9 booster back, we're talking about 20 times the energy given the velocity that we're moving at, and all of that energy just gets converted into heat, and then we need to use those tiles to just help dissipate that heat. They're not ablative like you would see on something like Dragon, which uses an ablative in the capsule shape. So they are these tiles that are made to be reusable. So any data we're getting on the actual temperatures it was seeing during heating, all of that is just really hugely valuable. Where Starship is really unique is, and Kate and Shiva have talked about it a couple of times, is once we're through this kind of hypersonic section, and we get down to the subsonic. And that's where we really learned a lot and proved that Starship's really just its basic shape could work. And we did that during the suborbital campaign. Again, if you compare it to the shuttle, which entered, it had the wings. It had a similar heat shield system, but it had wings, and then was almost flown like a glider once it re-entered and was down to those subsonic speeds. With Starship, we're not doing that. We're just coming straight down. We'll hit terminal velocity, which with Starship is around 200 miles an hour, and then we use a flip maneuver to ignite those engines, do a landing burn, and then touch down on the ground. So you don't need a runway. We're doing that, again, designed because when we go to the moon, when we go to Mars, there's not going to be a runway there for us. And so that propulsive landing is going to be really important. This is an animation of pretty much what we were just watching on actual Starship video, which is pretty incredible. But we go through peak heating. One of the benefits of today's trajectory, actually, we got closer to what the heating profile will be on just a normal mission when you compare it to our previous flights, which were headed out to Hawaii. So we go through peak heating, and then we hit subsonic, and then Starship splashes down in the ocean. Again, we're not doing a landing burn on this flight, and we're not expecting Starship to survive the impact. We're not going to be recovering any of the hardware. For now, though, we are just still waiting to see if we're going to get some signal back. We're currently at a loss of signal with Starship. Don't know for sure what its status is, and so we're just continuing to listen in. But it was pretty incredible seeing the flaps really do their thing to maneuver the vehicle as it's moving through hypersonic. One of the big trade-offs between something like Shuttle and Starship is wings can be pretty heavy. And so if we can really demonstrate that Starship's controllable through that hypersonic regime when you're coming through the atmosphere, 25 times the speed of sound, you can save a whole lot of weight by not having really big wings. So super valuable to get this data, super valuable to then figure out what we're going to do on our next test flights.
Dan, you'd brought up a really interesting point, too, that for on Shuttle, you are gliding in, going back to a runway. On Starship, because we're landing vertically, we are basically coming down, and then we've seen this during the suborbital campaign. We're not going to see it today, but during the suborbital campaign, we did the flip maneuver and then light our engines for a landing burn. And that's also really important for some of our other terrestrial destinations. That we don't have as much of an atmosphere on Mars. There is pretty much no atmosphere. There's some great views from our previous test campaigns of a landing burn and upright landing. But on the moon, there is no atmosphere. On Mars, the atmosphere is extremely thin, so you actually need some other sophisticated techniques that other landers have used to land there. And so this vertical landing technique is really important to landing on destinations like those, which is ultimately where we're trying to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope to demonstrate that landing in future missions. That wasn't one of our objectives for today. We wanted the ship to focus on opening and closing, the first demonstration of opening and closing the PEZ door, which is where we will deploy Starlink satellites from in the future, as well as gathering data on how the heat shield tiles performed during the entry period. And so far, all of that has gone really well. So overall, it's been pretty great, and it's great to see how those initial tests that we performed a couple years ago for those high altitude tests allow us to see what those will look like in the future. But this piece that we're doing today of, okay, if we are coming back from orbital velocity and we're going through that entry period, that is the missing piece, right? We already figured out how to land once the ship gets to a certain velocity or altitude, and it's really this piece that we were trying to figure out today. How do we get Starship to survive orbital velocity atmospheric entry? And we hope to find out soon.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about rapid iteration and how we do design. Part of our philosophy is testing early and often and trying to test in a way that is as flight-like as possible. But there's only so much you can do in a chamber where you're trying to simulate the atmosphere in a laboratory. So there's nothing quite like when the heat shield tile hits the atmosphere in flight. to gather that wonderful data and prove out some of the analyses and probably teach us a bunch of things that we didn't quite get right.
For sure. And obviously, for those of you that have been watching along with us, those were incredible views to see of that entry period where we saw the heat generating because of friction as the belly of Starship was making contact with the Earth's atmosphere, and that resulted in some plasma. So as Dan said before, we believe that we're in a bit of a blackout period at the moment. We are expecting the vehicle, if it's still alive, we would be expecting the vehicle to be approaching subsonic or slower than the speed of sound speeds in 3.5 minutes from now. So if it's still up there in one piece, it still has a way to go. We're not there just yet. But we saw that plasma field building up around the exterior, which can blanket the entire vehicle, as it does with all of our Dragon missions, and we're at a loss for telemetry at that point in time. So
Dan's seen a lot of those with Dragon missions that he's supported.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are hearing through some of the telemetry that it did look like we lost Starlink and our TDRS data flow at the exact same time. Now, if both of those signals are cutting out at the exact same time, that could mean we lost the ship. It has been several minutes since we've gotten any data from Starship. We are waiting just a couple more minutes just to see if we can get any additional confirmation, but that is one data point that we're tracking, and that could indicate that we had a loss or a breakup of the ship during that re-entry. So might not make it all the way to splashdown today, but we were able to get through the early phases of re-entry, hit some of that peak heating, which was just really incredible to see a Starship coming back from space after getting all those views from space for the very first time. So we'll just keep on listening in on the loops here, see if we hear anything over the next couple of minutes. And that might bring a close to a pretty successful day so far. So again, we did lose the TDRS. That's the tracking and data relay satellite. That's the satellite system that pretty much every spacecraft operating in orbit right now will use to get data. We were able to get some signal through that. And then we were also getting data back through Starlink.
Live view here of mission control down at Starbase. So these are all the folks who are experts on the various different systems, taking a look at the live data that we did have. Probably in mission mode still, but
absolutely.
It would be so tough to stay focused with what an exciting day we've had today.
Yeah, to quote Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. We don't know, as Dan said. We did lose connection with TDRS, which is the tracking and data relay satellite system, and Starlink at the same time. So it is a realistic possibility that we lost Starship, which honestly was always on the table. We didn't know how far it was going to get. The further we could fly and the more data we could collect was always the biggest win. And so regardless of, if we did lose the vehicle and we are not able to, make it all the way to our intended splashdown, note that we weren't intending to recover this vehicle, either vehicle, the Super Heavy booster nor the Starship. We weren't intending to recover either of them. They were both going to basically hit at terminal velocity and break up upon contact with the surface of the ocean. So we're standing by to hear whether or not we are going to be able to get telemetry readings back, but we are possibly anticipating news that we lost Starship due to basically a double blackout from TDRS and Starship data at the same time.
But it's worth mentioning, this is the first time that we have come back at these speeds in any of the test flights that we've done so far with Starship. So we are trying to prove out that the heat shield works as intended, that the controllability at those hypersonic speeds works as intended. So if we were able to get back any data on that, that means the next version, what happens on flight 4, 5, 6, is going to be better.
Now, we actually have some heat shields here. So these are what's doing all the work on Starship right now. There are 18,000 hexagonal heat shields like these. So this one that I have is flat, like this is what would be positioned on the flaps of Starship, whereas Shiva has something a little different.
Yeah, the one I have would be on the curved surfaces of Starship. I'll just put it in frame here. So we've got these attached at various points around the vehicle. Like you said, Kate, 18,000 of these tiles around, and they're doing the work to make sure that the structure of the vehicle doesn't carry all that thermal load, so we can recover the vehicles eventually and get to rapid reuse on them.
They're really lightweight. They sound a little different than I would have expected them to, but they are ceramic. And these are what's helping Starship survive through this period of entry. We're not sure how far we're going to make it. Again, this is the furthest that we've gotten in our test flight, but the further we fly, the more data that we can get, and that's ultimately the measure of success here, which I think today has been a huge success given where we've gone and how much further we've gotten with both the booster and Starship itself.
And one of the beautiful things about Starlink on board the vehicle, we were getting that high-speed video. High-speed video is a very high data rate, and usually video comes after you get your telemetry. So hopefully we were able to get some wonderful data throughout the entry period, which is normally something we have to wait for until after splashdown when we get that data off the data recorders.
Yeah.